Late for those in Zoom land. We are running late upstairs, and just for everyone's info, we are due back up there at 2:15 today. Let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Representative Campbell.
Here.
Representative Connolly.
Here.
Representative Harshman.
Excused.
Representative Jarvis.
Here.
Representative Provenza.
Here.
Representative Storer.
Here.
Representative Thayer. Representative Wharf.
Excused.
Chairman Byron.
Present, and let's go ahead and leave that open if we can. They're just grabbing lunch. We're just trying to catch back up from our last couple of meetings. Welcome again. Be nice or leave, our famous decorum line in TRW. Be civil, please work through the chair. Silence your phones for folks in here and my committee members. We are working on House Bill 5, which is a continuation of our last meeting, and we had gone through the room, and we waited for those on Zoom, and they kindly, a bunch of them signed up again. So at this time, I'd like to go right to Zoom, and we can discuss House Bill 5 for public comment. And the first that I have, if Mike Dawes is in the room, go ahead and let him in, and we'll hear from Mr. Dawes.
Just checking the audio.
We have you on audio, Mr. Dawes. We don't have you on video. Working on our end. But go ahead with your testimony. Thanks for logging in. Now you're muted. Fishing guides and technology. Oh, I think we're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just here to follow along and learn more. And I've been in the industry for 30 years, and I think I'm very interested to see where this is heading.
Thank you, Mr. Dawes. Really appreciate that. Go ahead and let Mr. Bain in.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bain declined.
Okay. On to our next Zoomer. Go ahead and let Sydney Handeland in.
Mr. Chairman, she's in. She's unmute her microphone and turn on the camera. There she is.
Okay, perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know where you're from and who you're representing, please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I had to navigate all of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and representatives. My name is Sydney Handeland, and I am from Casper. I am a Casper resident and a citizen. I could say I have no dog in this fight, but I do. I have friends, neighbors, members, businesses in my community who depend on the fishing tourism who will be affected by this. I can't speak for the rest of the state, but I can speak for Casper. I live here. This is my home. This is my home water. What I can offer you is an outside perspective, and my perspective is this. The issue with this bill, as it's written, is subsection A. It grants the Game and Fish the power to regulate fishing outfitters. It gives them the ability to set a number of commercial boats and to protect the quality of the fishing experience, the fishery, and the resources. First, of the outdoor recreation opportunities in the state, the Game and Fish does not manage the commercial operation. A close comparison would be for big game hunting outfitters. The Game and Fish does not regulate that. They have their own board to serve as their regulatory body. Second, with setting a limit on the number of boats, this could create a monopoly, and this cannot be done fairly without destroying many Wyoming small businesses in the process. And that includes all local businesses that depend on the fishing tourism. Third, I see there's a few definitions in this bill, and not one of them defines the quality of the fishing experience. And that's because it's subjective. It's different for every single person, and it cannot be defined. My quality fishing experience isn't the same as the next person. In addition to that, I have gone to several meetings, including task force meetings and local game and fish meetings. And that includes the Casper Region Hooking Injury meeting. And from that meeting, I would like to talk about something here. So, hooking injuries are predominantly caused by the method being used to hook the fish, and that means regulation. That means the type and style of the hook, the barbs on the hook, treble hooks, pegging rigs, things like that. There was also discussion at this meeting regarding extending artificial lure-only areas and closing more areas to the spawn. The good news is, of those regulations, the regulation changes. We can do them now. They can be done now, and as far as I know, they are being done now. We don't need this bill to do that to protect the resource. So in that aspect, regulation changes are being done to protect the resource. The significant amount of money that would be spent on this is more appropriate for habitat projects, restoration, education, outreach, aquatic invasive species programs, all of which would be better suited for protecting the resource directly. So my biggest conflict with this bill is subsection A as it reads. It gives the Game and Fish the power to regulate fishing outfitters, which is misplaced authority, and the ability to limit commercial boats, allows the chance for monopolization, and risks ruining local Wyoming economies. And the quality of the fishing experience is subjective, and it's different for every single person, and that cannot be defined. With that, I urge you today to either vote no on this bill as it's written, or abandon Section A and line 19 completely. If the goal is to regulate fishing outfitters, that needs to be done properly, which is by its own board, or expand the current outfitter board, and that's what needs to be on the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanlon. You're really going to like an amendment we're going to run here in a little bit. Committee, do you have any questions for Ms. Hanlon? Representative Connolly.
Hi, thanks for being here today. So would it be your opinion then that if this were to happen, a separate board would be established to kind of oversee it?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Conley. I would agree with that. I think either expanding the current outfitter board or perhaps creating a new one in its entirety would probably be the best solution here to properly regulate fishing outfitters. And with a board comes, requirements, business licenses, insurance, CPR, reports, things like that. And it adds that professional aspect to it where it is kind of a lucrative professional thing that's being done.
Thank you, Ms. Hanlon. Thank you, Representative Connolly, for the question. I have a quick one for you. Are you concerned about the financial impact creating yet another board in this state would have on our current list of vacancies statewide? And we have a list of board vacancies. It's pretty substantial and it's expensive to travel around the state. So if Ms. Hanlon, if you want to potentially comment on that, I think that'd be great for the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly. So I think creating a new board with how large fishing outfitters the industry is, I personally don't think you would have a problem filling board seats. I think there would need to be adequate funding allocated toward this. And I'm not the expert on that. I wouldn't know how to go about doing that properly. But I think with the economic impact that fishing does bring into Wyoming and all local communities, it's very important that it should be done.
Thank you, Ms. Hanlon. Committee, any more questions? Thank you for zooming in today. For the other folks on Zoom, just please get ready. We're going to call you in. And as a reminder, they let us out late upstairs and they're calling us back early. So these noon committee meetings are really getting affected by our discussions upstairs. Next up, we have Wes Richner from Casper. If you could go ahead and let him in, that would be great. Mr. Richner, go ahead and accept the invite in and unmute your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, representatives. My name is Wes Richner. I am from the Casper area. I own a fly fishing guide service, and I'm also a licensed big game outfitter in the state of Wyoming. I am here today to strongly oppose HB 005. As how Section A reads, it will monopolize the Wyoming fishing industry, pushing out small business and entrepreneurship. By limiting the number of guided trips, this regulation will reduce overall tourism, leaving a significant gap in local economy. Wyoming fishing outfitters and guides need to be regulated, don't get me wrong. But this bill gives the Game and Fish Commission the power to regulate the entire guided industry, which is more appropriately focused on wildlife management rather than business operations, making it very inconsistent as other industries have their own boards, such as the Livestock Board, Cosmetology Board, Board of Outfitters and Professional Guides, and many more. Some key features of a board being put in place is that it can evaluate each outfitter, require proper licensing, insurance coverage, and mandate annual reports. This board would also provide a clear process for resolving disputes between the public and guides, ensuring that the needs and concerns of both parties are met. Also, this board should be made up of a variety of types and sizes of outfitters appointed by the governor. By completely removing Section A and Line 19 of this bill, myself and others would be in support of the Game and Fish mandating permits that would be placed on boats, trailers, and trucks of fishing guides and outfitters. Giving the Game and Fish the ability to get more accurate data on how many fishing guides and outfitters are coming and are in our state. The next mandatory step needs to be the formation of a board for fishing outfitters and guides, or placing it in the existing board of outfitters and professional guides, such as the state of Idaho does. A significant unintended consequence of this regulation will likely be a shift toward more wade fishing, which could increase congestion in certain areas of rivers. I strongly encourage you to vote no on how HB 0005 currently reads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richner, for your comments. Committee, do you have any questions for Mr. Richner? Ms. Representative Campbell.
Thank you for being on today. I suspect you are from the city and county I am proud to represent. So thanks for logging on today. Just a clarifying question to help me understand. So with the way that this bill is written now, if we were to consider setting up an independent board to oversee, much like our outfitters, everything else is okay? On board with everything? I mean, not everything else is okay. That's a very general, yes, broadly sweeping statement. That adding that additional board oversight that was independent would make this more palatable. Yes.
Thank you,
That's
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Campbell. Yes. So to add to that, this would make it better and more palatable to get that board for sure. I see it to regulate it a lot better. I see it firsthand with the Board of Outfitters for hunting already. They do a great job on regulating the number of outfitters and guides within the state. They know that number. If that would be put in place, they could really have a set number, know what's going on in each region in the state. But yes, that would definitely help.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Richner, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your patience from the holdover on Tuesday as well. And okay, so the chairman and I have been working on a little amendment, and I just want to talk to the public about this a little bit. But it would be in that paragraph A, we would add language that there would, in this regulation, there would be that the state would, after the word state on line 6, actually would say, in a lawful ratio that prioritizes Wyoming resident professional guides and outfitters. That's the first part of this. So we would give priority, and we do that. There's legally challenged fee systems, with resident and non-resident amounts we can charge. And I think we know these ratios. I think that there's folks that know that, and we can follow that. The other part of this we would grant an exception to A where it says, it shall not apply to a Wyoming resident that uses a city, county, state boat ramp to launch their commercially guided fishing boat and guide fishermen if the resident is guiding the fishermen to a location of lands that they own. So that would kind of take care of our local people, I think, and really kind of prioritize that. And then I think, Mr. Richner, we're talking, we probably can't form a board today. We just can't. It's going to take a little work and time, but the second part of this amendment would go on and say that there would be an advisory board appointed by the governor to work on this with the commission. And they come from the same commission areas, of appointment. And that they would work hand in hand with this or the next, and then report back to our committee on these recommendations. Should we form a new board? Should we join the existing board we've talked about? Because I don't think any of us know on this, dais here today. But I think that's something that you folks who are in the industry can work on and bring us back recommendations. And then I think the next part that this amendment does, the last thing, and we'll move in a minute, but I want to tell you these changes we're thinking about is on this fee structure itself, that it would follow that lawful tested ratio where out-of-state non-residents are going to pay more than resident guides. I mean, I just think it's fair for this sticker. It's not the same money across. So that's some things we're looking at to hopefully improve this bill so we can move forward. And I know that's a lot of stuff. It's not right in front of you. But just kind of what I've said, just your thoughts on some of that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Harshman. With that, I do think that is pointed in the right direction for sure. The one thing that I really want to make sure that if it does, which in my mind, it still needs to go to a board, of course, if we can kind of figure out how many outfitters and guides are in the state with this first step of the regulation through Game and Fish, mandating a permit to be put on boats and trailers. That'll kind of give us a baseline to see how many we are dealing with. I think if it's over a certain number, a higher number of outfitters within the state, I believe there should be a board set aside to strictly, regulate that kind of stuff and help the commission make decisions on where it needs to be regulated and what needs to be regulated. And I believe that board really needs to be, picked of a lot of different types and sizes of outfits throughout the state. That way everybody gets to be heard, from the little guy to the big guy. So that's really my input on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harshman. Thank you, Mr. Richner. Any other questions from the committee before we hop on to the next Zoomer? Appreciate that, committee. Go ahead and let in Mr. Blake Jackson, please. Blake, when you're able, go ahead and accept that. Unmute your mic, and great to hear from you.
Hello. You got me?
We have you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Blake Jackson. I am one of the owners here of the Ugly Bug Fly Shop and Crazy Rainbow Fly Fishing here in Casper, Wyoming, as well as the leasee of the largest section of private land on the Gray Reef stretch. So approximately 9 miles of the Gray Reef section of the North Platte River. First off, I'd like to thank Mr. Hayes for his testimony on Tuesday. It was outstanding and a great message, and I'd like to kind of expand on his message. Obviously, we know that anglers and tourism, those of us that are currently permitted with the BLM, as well as fishing outfitters that are not permitted through the BLM, are using our waterways, and expanding on the pressure and the experience that Wyoming has to offer. Obviously, the Wyoming Game and Fish has data to support this, showing reductions in fish numbers, overall fish health, and kind of some concerning numbers depending on the waterways that you're in. So I would like to state that I know the committee is concerned and worried about a fee structure or a permit that would be required among outfitters and guides. I'd like to reassure the committee that this is really kind of a minimal drop in the bucket. Most of our surrounding states require a $150 application fee and like a $50 annual fee for renewal from guides, and obviously a much more substantial, $400 to $1,500 a year from an outfitter perspective, and then a renewal fee of $300 to $400 a year once the application is continued. To me, this is kind of a non-factor. In a lot of ways, if those numbers to be part of a permitting process scares away some of the traffic or eliminates some of the traffic, in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of what we're trying to achieve, is a reduction of pressure on our waterways. And I think people that are making a living and actively using our waterways for commercial gain would be happy to pay these sort of fees to see some regulation and oversight take place. So I guess basically my message is I'm 100% for this. I'm 100% for the somewhat amendments that we've been talked about with, or have been talked about with a board moving forward. I think that's a great idea, but I do think that there needs to be a law enforcement arm. Obviously, if down the road things are restricted or regulated without some sort of law enforcement arm or backing to the bill, I don't think people are going to follow it. They're going to keep using Wyoming for commercial gain, and especially with our surrounding states restricting more and more of their usage, I can only see this becoming and getting to be a larger and larger issue as we move forward if we don't have some sort of restrictions in place. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Committee, any questions for Mr. Jackson? I have one, Mr. Jackson. The previous TRW committee had the opportunity to come to Casper, and we did go tour the launch at the reef. And what surprised me, speaking about this law enforcement aspect, is that not only did we have the BLM ranger there, but we also had the Natrona County Sheriff there. And you guys are very lucky to be able to partner together and have those folks. It amazed me that it is so used that the sheriff has to come in and try to help and assist that ranger, because those rangers are spread pretty thin. Can you comment on what we previously or currently refer to in the industry as scab guides? And do you see a lot around Casper? These are folks that don't have permits, don't have permission, are taking advantage of I would say different jurisdictions that don't have the ability to enforce it, specifically the widespread, that vast amount of land and water that the BLM covers, or, for instance, a Forest Service. So do you mind commenting on if you see what we kind of, the slang word is scab guide? Do you see that in Casper, and how does that affect, not only your business, but the experience for the public?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're 100% correct. There are many fishing guides coming from out of state, as well as people in our own backyard that are operating here on the river. We currently have a BLM permit process that permits the use of BLM lands. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of weird gray area there where you can float through BLM without a permit. Kind of, if you have a permit, they want you to pay the fee structure. If you don't have a permit, they kind of turn a blind eye to that and don't really enforce it. So, to my best guess, we have somewhere between 300 to 500 unpermitted float trips taking place here on the North Platte River. Obviously, for someone like me that's trying to run a business, I just kind of want a level playing field, right? We pay into the system, we support the system. We have a number of Wyoming employees that love our job and want that to be successful, but it does affect us, and it does affect us often in weird circumstances where some local guy at the bar will take people fishing for a couple $100 or for cheaper than we will, and we often get calls of, will we match that price? Obviously, we put out a better product than what they do and do it by the rules, but it does affect us in a big way and often adds to weird increases in pressure, right? We see, the normal faces and kind of the normal people that work the water system. But at times you'll see a non-resident guide come here for a couple of weeks. And generally that's when we experience the giant influxes in pressure early in the spring, April, May, when our surrounding states are dealing with runoff or water clarity issues is really when we see the big influxes take place.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any more questions for Mr. Jackson? Seeing none, really appreciate it. I am going to try to let in, if we may, Mr. Bain. He had some technical difficulties on his side. If you could call on him and if he could click the right buttons. If not, we're going to hop over to final. Mr. Bain, go ahead and introduce yourself once you're in. Don't forget to unmute yourself. Sometimes this takes a few seconds, folks. There we go. Mr. Bain, the floor is yours. And you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for my time here to discuss really what I feel is very appropriate and necessary in getting some type of regulation in place. And I really think it's really a necessary endeavor to trying to create some type of board that does oversee this with people that really have skin in the game. I got about 30 years of fishing and guiding in Wyoming and have been following this process with Albert Summers for quite some time, and so glad that you guys are continuing this. And really, I just also feel that Chris Hayes had a very comprehensive position on his ideas. What was going on over in Pinedale, and that's really what I know most. We've had permits there for over 20 years, and over the 20 years, it is unbelievable to see the amount of people that are coming in from out of state and guiding illegally. And it's pretty obvious, as I just heard previously, about who has permits, who doesn't. And I think really it's good to have the shuttle drivers involved, because to get accurate numbers, the shuttle drivers really know who's on the water each and every day. And to kind of give you an idea, in Pinedale, the first state land over at the hatchery is the one coming down from the actual BLM. And you'll see during July, which is our biggest month for sure out of the entire year, sometimes 20 and 30 boats floating down the river that day. So it's obviously a problem, and I really am encouraged that there's going to be some regulation. But the biggest part that I see, there needs to be the enforcement of the regulation, because that's one of the biggest things I see in Pinedale is the lack of enforcement. Because I know the Bridger Teton has one guy, officer, that is in charge of 4 million acres. The BLM has a guy that's got however many million acres he's dealing with, and the same thing at the Bureau of Reclamation. So now that we're here with social media, post-COVID, days and all that, with the amount of pressure, we're left with the aftermath of a plethora of pressure on the water, and it ain't doing the Green River any good, or nor the Newfort, because they just cannot accept the amount of pressure. I've sat on the side of the river with several different ranch owners and watched the first ripple of the boat wake hit the fish. They go down, they leave, and the last ripple they feel, they pop back up. So we see it in the fall, that in the spring, that the amounts of trout are still in the river. They've just learned to get smart about it, which is obviously encouraging, but therefore it's also making it much more of a challenge to put clients on fish. So, I do support this House Bill 5 for sure. And by the way, our name of our business is Real Deal Anglers. And I see the enforcement like up in Teton County. Well, everybody knows everybody up there, right? You don't see this problem down there, but Sublette County, Sweetwater County, Lincoln County is huge. There are so many boats down there that are coming in from the various states. And I know one for sure that came in last year from Montana. They've been coming every year. Well, they decided, since they had the pressure feeling that they were going to get caught in Sublette County, they went over to the South Fork this year. And as I understand it, several of them got caught over there. So anyway, it's really nice to have something in place here and enforced. And I really hope you guys are able to whittle that through, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. Committee, any questions for Mr. Bain? I probably was on the river with him about 20 years ago, last time I saw you. So great to see you again. Thank you for sticking with us the last week and a half while we try to get folks in to have some public testimony. We're going to go to our last Zoomer today, and it's Mr. Shanor from Casper. You go ahead and let him in.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Hey, happy to be here, Mr. Chairman. Name is Thomas Shaner. I'm a resident, Casper, Wyoming, practicing attorney. Used to be fly fishing guide in past lifetime. Currently involved with several charities and other nonprofits aiming to make the North Platte River, specifically Gray Reef, better fishery, better habitat, things of that nature. I don't have much to add. Most of the people have discussed the main issues, except a couple. I want to go back to this 2024 hooking study, which one of the previous guests brought up. And I guess I should say 100% for this bill. And if it is to be amended as it's been proposed, I would be for those as well. But in 1995, that's where the study started. 230 boats floated the Gray Reef section of the North Platte River. Of those boats, 22% were non-resident and virtually zero were commercial. In 2022, 4,400 boats floated the Gray Reef stretch of North Platte River, of which 90% were commercial and or non-resident, or a combination of both, meaning that a non-resident hired a resident guide. There's 30,000 fish that live in the stretch of river, and according to that study, in that time frame, 50,000 fish were caught. So pursuant to the Game and Fish, every fish in the river gets caught at least once with what we're currently dealing with. Of the fish studied, 25% of those fish exhibited hook and line scarring that would likely be fatal. So the results to the Game and Fish, and I'm sure they could speak to this if you'd like them to, is that you're seeing declining fish populations. It's related to the overcrowding. It's more than likely going to be unsustainable. And because of that, the Game and Fish is going to have to come out of pocket and increase stocking efforts, which is obviously going to cost more money. So, like I said, 100% in favor of this. I think the solution is twofold, and everybody's alluded to this, but we need regulation. I think this bill does it. I think the bill, as Representative Harshman stated, I think the amendments are fantastic. And the reality is unfettered use of a public resource doesn't work. Doesn't work with oil and gas, doesn't work with agriculture, logging, mining, hunting, and you can't ask it to work for fishing. So we need that. And the other one, which is the elephant in the room, is revenue increases. People need to be charged to use the public resource commercially. And then also non-resident recreators have to be charged more money than $14 a day. 20 years ago, when I used to guide, the price to fish the North Platte River was $14. It's still $14. You could put the fee at $50 and you're not going to lose a single non-resident recreator here. An average fishing trip costs $500 to $700 per day without travel, without gear, without hotel, without lodging. $14 a day could go to $25 a day. That's not going to be a drop in the bucket for what it costs to recreate here. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions as it pertains to this bill or anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Shaner. Anyone on the committee have a question for Mr. Shaner? Hearing none, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Zoom World. Anyone in we missed? Okay, we're good on Zoom World. Anyone here that did show up today to testify? I'm going to go ahead and close public comment if nobody else from the public is left in the room. Seeing, oh, we do have Miss. Thank you for those in Zoom land and listening online. That was Lee Livingston, State Board of Outfitters, here to answer any questions as we begin to discuss this bill. All right, we'll go ahead and officially close public comment now. Committee, what is your pleasure? It's been moved by Representative Harshman, seconded by Representative Thayer. We are on the bill. So how this works, committee, is now the bill is open and we can go ahead and start at the beginning of the bill. I would ask for the amendment. The amendment's already been proposed and some cross-sectioning and yeah, go ahead, Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, I think everybody has the amendment distributed. Does everybody have that in front of them?
Yes.
I don't know, do you have copies of you? I don't know if it's out. Okay, it will be. Here's the amendment, and I'll just, so everybody who's watching on Zoom and I'll just go through the amendment for everybody to, and if we could give the department, yeah, that'd be wonderful. Okay, so page 1, line 5, after guides, insert providing an exception, creating an advisory board, specifying duties of the advisory board. That's in the title. Page 2, line 6 of the amendment does two things, really. After state, we delete state and insert state in a lawful. So if you read section A, lines 2 through 6, all that stays, lines 1 through 6. And then in addition, we propose to add in the amendment, in the state in a lawful ratio that prioritizes Wyoming resident professional guides and outfitters. I think some of you know what that lawful ratio is. You can work on that. We don't want to set that in this committee. Continuing with it, this subsection shall not apply to a Wyoming resident if that person uses a city, town, county, or state boat ramp or other access point to launch a commercially guided fishing boat to guide fishermen in the Wyoming, guide fishermen if the Wyoming resident is guiding a fisherman to a location where the lands are owned or leased by the Wyoming resident or the Wyoming resident's immediate family. Okay, so that's the first part. Then page 2, after that, we're going to insert into B and renumber. There's created a commercially guided fishing boats advisory board. This is on line 20 of the amendment. The board shall consist of 7 members appointed by the governor. 1 member shall be appointed from each appointment district to Wyoming Statute 9(1)(2)18. Members shall serve a 4-year term. The governor may remove any member of the board as provided. Wyoming Statute 9(1)(2)02, vacancies of the board shall be filled by appointment. The unexpired term, the advisory board shall provide recommendations to the commission for promulgating rules under subsection C of this section. I've got some more that I've written into this that I want to add here a little bit later, and I think I'm going to add it right now. You can write it down after that on line 28. This advisory board, along with the commission, shall report back to the joint TRW committee with a recommendation on creating a new board or joining an existing board. I don't think we want to decide that today in this committee or this legislature. Let you folks who live this world talk about it and bring it to us in the interim. So that's an addition. Did you get that, staff? And I've got it. I can give it to you on that. I'll repeat it. So on line 28, after the word section, the advisory board, along with the commission, shall report back to the joint TRW committee with a recommendation on creating a new board or joining an existing board. Okay, the rest of the amendment stays as is. We delete B and insert C because we're adding this new paragraph. And then on page 2, line 19, the amendment, it's line 32 of the amendment. We go back to this fee structure. We just heard testimony, and it says, insert the annual fee established under this subsection, this is for the boat and trailer fees, shall be different for resident and non-resident professional fishing guides or outfitters and shall be in a ratio similar to a fee ratio for resident fishing license and non-resident fishing license. Okay, and then renumbers the rest of it. So we'll need a second for that if we're going to discuss.
Seconded by Representative Campbell. So we are on the proposed amendment committee. Certainly want to open this up for discussion, and for some of the newer committee members, I really appreciate Representative Wharf. We tried to work this into the bill to get it a little clearer, but this is generally how these amendments will come for committee work. And then we need to spend our time getting this right now, so when we do get back upstairs, if this bill does move out of this room, we can be prepared to discuss it on the floor with all of our colleagues. So back on the amendment, do we have any questions? Representative Storr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a recommendation for an amendment to the amendment. It's quite simple. On page 2 of the amendment, line 1, I would insert the words 12-month in front of resident fishing licenses and non-resident
Annual.
fishing licenses.
Word annual, probably.
Well, I just am going on what's on the website.
Okay,
Because they're now, they're 12 months rather than an annual.
12-month, yeah. Gotcha.
It was a change friendly. I'm gonna bring in the amendment and Representative Campbell, the seconder. So any other questions on this amendment committee? Let's get, I know people's pencils are still going, so let's give everyone a second to get through it. Representative Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification, so I think it's going to be on page 1, line 27, shall provide recommendations to the commission. That's where we changed it to read the joint TRW committee with the commission. So we have both together. Is that where we're doing that?
Co-Chair Hirschman.
Mr. Chairman, the part that you wrote on that I added to this prepared amendment comes after that. Doesn't delete any of the prepared amendment. It's only an addition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Hirschman. Thank you, Representative Campbell. Yeah, for those, that just adds an ability for them to come back to the joint TRW at a later date. Enza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to check on staff and see if they need us to read how that sentence came out after we amended it, or we're good.
Sure, you can go ahead.
So this is how I read it with that amendment. The advisor, so line 26, starting with the new sentence, the advisory board shall provide recommendations to the commission for promulgating rules under subsection C of this section. The advisory board, along with the commission, shall report to, and then insert the rest of the language.
Back to the TRW Joint Committee. Staff is working on that as we speak with Representative Harshman. Thank you, Representative Provenza, for clearing that up. Representative Thayer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification on some discussion we had on Tuesday was addressing commercial boats that go out that are not working. They're out for a fun day on the river. I just don't know if that needs to go in there.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, Representative Thayer, and I've already alluded to it once and had some great discussion with Representative Wharf about this. There's a number of ways to go about it. I think that in the process that we're looking at in this bill, I would prefer to leave it open because some of this works for some areas and some of it doesn't work for others. With this, it could become even a reporting system online. So at the end of the month, that's how it's currently done in a lot of our federal partners. You fill it online, and if you had 100 boats out, but you had 10 guides out, you just select personal or commercial trip and they do check at random. I think we had a lot of great testimony about what is this without enforcement, which is, I think, a lot of holdup that we have with a lot of bills we pass. You know, this isn't a statement. This is a very big policy change, and without enforcement, it's nothing. So I think you bring up a really good point, and it was to Representative Worf's concern on Tuesday that there needs to be a mechanism to differentiate this, because most of these folks are doing it on their days off. They're generally younger than me and generally still have the bug to be on the water 100, 150 days a year. So I think that's a really good point. I think we can address it potentially later, but also as this board gets formed, I would like to give it to those 7 folks from across the state that are going to be advising, and let them be the professionals, if that helps clear up your question.
Thank you.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's more a question not about adjusting the amendment, but the impact of the amendment. So as we are now with this amendment, assuming there's approval, my assumption is that if we approve this amendment, then it will adjust the need to do additional or update the fiscal note, because it changes that significantly.
Representative Campbell, that is correct. At this time, I'm not sure the process to get that fiscal note pumped out that quickly, but I do think you're right. And I think some of our folks that were testifying were alluding to maybe a bill that is coming next to have a discussion generally about game and fish funding and where that is coming from specific to this industry.
Follow up. And that's, I think, not only does it remove, I think this amendment will remove the fiscal impact, because now it's not a game and fish oversight, but it's taking that fiscal impact and shifting it to the creation of an advisory board and the expenses that go with that. So might be eliminating one impact and shifting it to another, but yeah, we definitely need to have that fiscal note updated.
Yeah, I agree, and we will work on that. Committee, any other question? Representative Worf, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I guess the one question I want to ask to the committee, this board that we're talking about putting together, obviously we're talking about not knowing what those costs are going to be to administrate that. Rather than putting that solely on the back of the commercial fishermen, I really think we need to look at perhaps that this board should apply to all outfitting that exists, like biking, rock climbing, all these other things, because I think what we're talking about, it's not fair to just do that. And I do want to, we've got the Outfitters Board here, representative. I don't know how that impacts them, but I know I'm familiar with Idaho and Montana, and they have everybody under one system. Now, I believe that the Outfitter Board could remain the Outfitter Board. They would just operate underneath that board. But I want to ask if that is concerning or brings issues up to their board.
Thank you, Representative Worf, for that question. Mr. Livingston is coming up. I will comment on that. This is something we've been wrestling with in this specific to this piece of legislation for over 2 decades. And Representative Worf and I have had a lot of great discussion about this, and I believe we agree. And this is something that our state has talked about, and us in conversations have talked about. We really do want to wrap our heads around the word outfitting and how this applies. I look at this bill as an opportunity to really lay the framework, because once again, we're going to have to look out at every inch of this state and try to figure out what is outfitting. We have my neck of the woods, we got outfitting for hiking, biking, sled dog riding, mountaineering is a big one, I mean, man, the sky's the limit. So with that, I do really appreciate Mr. Livingston being here, and I'd like him to share some thoughts on that discussion that we've had a number of times, and maybe talk about a potential interim topic.
Chairman Byron, members of the commission, Lee Livingston. I'm an outfitter from northern Wyoming, been in the industry for 40 years. Also in my 3rd term on the State Board of Outfitters and Professional Guides. We have had many internal discussions about what this would do if it was shifted to us as an outfitter board. The big elephant in the room is we do not know how many fishing outfitters are out there. I see this bill as potentially starting to get a handle on that. Keep in mind that the State Board of Outfitters is an entirely self-funded board. We operate under all of our revenue is from the licensing of outfitter and guides. Currently, we have 286 big game outfitters, and we have about 1,200 licensed guides. So again, we operate completely on our revenue. We are the highest license fee for a professional license in the state of Wyoming. But that is because we are driven because of what we need to have to operate. I've said it many times before. My administrator who's watching on, she throws stuff at me whenever I say it, but outfitting is outfitting. We have to adhere to certain regulations to be a big game outfitter in the state of Wyoming. We have to provide proof of insurance. We have to provide a proof that we are a business in Wyoming. We have to go through a rigorous testing to become an outfitter. You also have to go through testing to become a guide. You have to have a certain number of guide days before you can become an outfitter. So it definitely brought the level of professionalism up when they brought in the outfitter board years ago. I think it was in the early 80s, just a little bit before my time. But one thing I will circle back to is in the amendment, if I may comment, it's talking about a different fee. When the outfitter board was first formed, a non-resident could not be an outfitter in Wyoming. That was challenged and it was defeated. We can now have a non-resident as an outfitter. Right now, we cannot charge a different price whether you're from the state or not from the state.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Representative Worf, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director Livingston. What the question I want to know is if we do come up with a board that's over all outfitting, do you see that impacting your board? Because I know your board's self-funding. Would you want to see that board put underneath that board? Would you want to see, I don't want to speak for your board, but I do know I've talked with a lot of your members in the past, and I understand the concern if the fishing stuff was to be thrown into that same outfitting board for that purpose. But if we create a bigger outfitting board, would you prefer that, or do you think it would absorb your board? Do you think it would be better to just leave the big game out and have the board that we create just look at all other aspects of outfitting? That's the question I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston.
Chairman Byron, Representative Worf, I honestly think it needs to be in Game and Fish, but we're still fighting over that. I'm reluctant to speak for the rest of my board. We've tossed this around, like I said, many internal discussions. I see where it could get big. Former Representative Summers and I worked on a bill that would have created something similar to the Idaho model where everything is under one board. I know several of my board members wouldn't want to see it. So again, I can't speak for the entire board. I could see it getting pretty big. I think your two biggest players are going to be big game outfitters and fishing outfitters. And then again, there's a lot of other outfitting happening in Wyoming. So I kind of danced around it, but I can't speak for the rest of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. And I do appreciate the question. We have, and externally, we have had this discussion at interim TRW meetings, and I think it's worth continuing that discussion. And if there's a framework in that bill, I think I was on that bill, if there's a framework for it, certainly would love to work with Representative Worf and have that bigger discussion. Representative Worf, follow up? Very good.
No, Mr. Chairman, but I do want the committee to understand that we need to be cognizant of what may happen. And I share his concerns because I've talked to enough outfitters and I know that that's a shared concern. Some would like it, some wouldn't. So it's still kind of a can of worms that I don't know I really want to touch it, but I do. This has gone on long enough. We got to do something to address the fishing industry, the commercial aspect of that. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Representative Worf. Any other questions for Representative Livingston? Real quick before that board, we are at 1:20. Our time has been cut short by our body upstairs. We have a lot of bills to get to in the next 2 weeks, so just be cognizant. I believe we're supposed to be back upstairs at 1:15. My co-chairs kicked me underneath the desk, sorry, 2:15, my co-chair has kicked me under the desk because we're doing the people's work down here, and he'd like to stay down here till we get them all done. So, and I would like to too today. So let's try to clear our slate. We are on the amendment, Mr. Livingston, appreciate that. Any other questions from our Representative Campbell? Okay, I do think at this point, if the agency would like to come up, I'd like to invite them up. This is a pretty large change from what we were discussing, and a good change, I think. So I'm kind of teeing them up without a lot of time to digest this, but I'd certainly appreciate the agency's comments. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. Afternoon, Representative. Angie Bruce, Game and Fish Director, and Chief of Fisheries, Alan Osterlin, is back as well. Just, a quick few comments. We just got it, when we came in today, so we're reviewing it. It seems like a separate board makes sense in some way. Everybody seems to support that. And then we're really looking at it for trying to understand your intent and seeing if we can implement that with this pretty major change, like you said. The only thing that I would have to say that I'm a little cautious on is having a board appointed by the governor to advise a commission appointed by the governor. There might be some other examples that, you can maybe point me to of how this works so we can kind of formulate how that works. So I want to just say if we could reserve the right to maybe provide some tweaks or amendments to you prior to the floor as we take it back and kind of digest how this aligns with our commission authority.
Thank you, Director Bruce. Appreciate that. And we did have some conversations, we really want to honor the 7 different districts, and Representative Worf and I talked about maybe trying to get each one of those commissioners to appoint that representative from, that was a really good idea from Representative Worf. So I think we could potentially tweak that, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess in response to that, my concern is if we don't bring this as a committee of the whole standing committee amendment, there's different rules attributed to how we do that process. And I'm looking at page 1, line 5 amendment, we're changing some of that title, right? So we might get a challenge on rules, but committees have the opportunity to do that. So we can do this as a committee. So my concern is we don't want to do a second reading amendment. We want to do it here.
Appreciate that, Representative Provenza. I'm going to let Representative Harshman digest that. Department, any other comments? I know you're still flipping through the pages. Okay, Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready for the question on the amendment. I think we can still continue to work it through the process. We went back and forth on this governor or board or commission appointee thing. That'll be an easy fix. I think we can fix. We could fix it now if we want, but I think we want to move this amendment one way or the other pretty soon here so we can get going.
Representative Worf.
I'm a little reluctant. I don't want to complicate it more. I'm wondering if we just leave it with the commission. We talked earlier about having the commission. Each commission is broken, or the department is broken into 7 judicial districts. Rather than creating a board right now, I'm wondering if we can ask the commissioners to go back to the counties that they represent and visit with the people in their communities and help. I think they can fill the role of this advisory board. I think the commission's there. I just don't know. I don't want to throw more on our commissioners. I know they already have a lot on their plate, but to me, I think that's a more natural approach right now. Rather than creating that board, have the commission that's already appointed by the governor visit about their district. Because the concerns we all have is, okay, once we regulate it, the areas right now that are really impacted, most likely you're going to see some of that go to the secondary areas and then the tertiary areas. And I worry about us being able to manage the whole thing. And that's why I think the better example, rather than creating a new board, we already have a commission. I guess that's the question I have, is if the department feels like that's too much to put solely on the commission to try and collect that information and come back with us with their recommendations.
Thank you, Representative Worf. I too have concerns and could see this going both ways. And to Representative Provenza's point, certainly don't need to get into a second reading situation that defeats the whole purpose of this with everyone that's done so much work for so long. So I want to get it right here. I want to be respectful of that time. And I don't think the commission can comment right now on that, just because we're throwing at them quickly. I love that idea. I think Representative Worf really brings something to the table there where they could point it. I also, I think this is maybe a one or two time deal where then they come back and report to the interim. So with that, where my thoughts are, Representative Worf.
Mr. Chairman, like I said, I don't want to complicate this, and I'm just going to ask this question. If our committee would be comfortable to adopt this amendment, but lay it back. Let's not put it out of committee so we can move forward and talk about the other bills. And I don't know, I see our vice chairman shaking his head no, but I don't want to rush this, and I think perhaps the bills that are behind it help reinforce this. And I just don't want to squash them by taking so much time on this bill. That's the only reason why it gives us time to maybe get some feedback from the Game and Fish as far as whether or not they think the commission could do that. We can change that amendment and wipe it out to where it's just the Game and Fish Commission that's doing this rather than creating a board. We still may want to do an advisory board. I'm not sure, but rather than rush it, I would rather do it right. And that's kind of the feeling that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, I think the idea, and I think the idea, we went back and forth with this, who appoints this little advisory board. Basically, we're thinking the advisory board would be like the outfitters who testified on this bill, who live this every day. That's who we want to have as an advisory board. So we thought the governor, or maybe it's simply just cross out the word governor and write commission in there, and can appoint this advisory board. They're not a decision-making board, but they're an expertise board to give you what's happening really every day out there where they work. That's the idea behind it. It's not an outfitter or a regulatory board. This is just to come back to us later then with good policy recommendations. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that would be a friendly amendment on line 22, the amendment to scratch governor and just write the word commission. And the Game and Fish Commission can pick these 7 operators out there to help them. So,
Thank you, Representative Harshman. Considering that's friendly, Representative Campbell, you were the second, I believe. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Thank you. Commission's not shaking their head. We're still trying to throw it back to everyone else, but we are going to do that. So, okay, we are now back on the amendment with that change, line 22. Everyone's aware of that. With that, Representative Campbell?
I would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not just line 22. I would say any time we see the word governor.
Conforming, yep, got
Yeah.
that, LSO.
Yeah.
Intent staying the same. Tanner's working on it. We can get that to you after. Everyone's jotting down. Okay, any more questions, committee, on this amendment? Seeing none? I'd entertain a question. Question being called by Representative Worf. On the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment passes. Back on the bill. Okay. Back on the bill, House Bill 5. Committee, we have adopted that amendment. Questions, Representative Provenza?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I just have a point of discussion. I just want to take us back to the last meeting, and we had one outfitter say, that he would put his oars up tomorrow if it meant that I would have the opportunity to fish the same streams and rivers with my daughter when she grows up. And I wrote that quote down and I hung it above my name on my desk, because I think it encompasses the importance of Wyoming's heritage and our wildlife and our open spaces. And I think that this bill makes a honorable effort to try and tackle that balance of making sure that the people can use the land in and the resources and raise their families here in the same way that we grew up here. And while also having to say, we need to do something about this problem, right? So I'm going to be voting for this bill. I think it's a bill that conserves Wyoming's natural heritage. I think it's a great move in the right direction. And I appreciate the effort that this committee made in the interim and that we made the last couple days. I'm honored to serve with you, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. Question on the bill. This will be Representative Worf, getting out ahead of myself a little bit. Go ahead.
I just have one more question, and I don't want to belabor it, but on page 2, line 8, where it says the commission may promulgate, I still have a problem with that. I struggle with saying may. We spent a lot of time talking about this, and I'm concerned that there's another group of legislators that will see this, and I really question if we want to leave it as may or if we want to turn it to a shall, because I feel like may is not what we want. We want something at the end of the day, and I think may leaves that up to where there could be something unforeseen that causes it to tank, and I would rather make sure that this is something at the end of the day, we got something. And so I see a few heads, so I would make the motion or the amendment to strike may and add shall on page 2, line 8.
Motion has been made on page 2, line 8, to strike may and change it to a shall. Representative Campbell?
Thank you,
second?
Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment to the amendment, because we also see.
You got a second?
second.
Do we have to second first?
Yep, and that's fine.
So I'll second.
Then we can still talk.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
second.
Yep, it's been seconded by Representative Campbell. Go ahead.
So on the same page, line 2, or line 3, where it also says may. So change both of those to shall. Thank you.
Consider that friendly. Representative Worf, okay. Committee, any more discussions on the may versus shall? We spent a lot of time on this during the interim meeting. This is a tough one. I think this bill in a good way has taken a different direction and certainly has a lot more in it. Mr. Chairman? Mr. Vice Chair Harshman.
I just think, Mr. Chairman, this friendly add of the second shall, I think we got to be careful. I think the shall in paragraph A is considerably different than the shall in paragraph B. And the shall in paragraph A might bring out a few enemies to this bill. And I don't want to, I think the bill is really important, and I don't think it has to be there in paragraph A. I think the rulemaking, fair enough. But, so, Mr. Chairman, I'd move to divide this amendment. Division 1 is in paragraph A and Division 2 is in paragraph B, and I'd call for the question on Division 2 in paragraph B. I think that's fine.
Okay, just to be clear, Representative Harshman has called for the question on page 2, line 8, changing the may to a shall. Question being called. All those in favor of that? Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, so page 2, line 8, that may becomes a shall. Representative Co-Chair Harshman, back to your
Mr. Chairman, on
division.
that first division on line 3 of the bill, on the limits, I think we just keep that as may, so I'd urge a no vote on that.
I do think it warrants some discussion. Representative Connolly.
Yeah, I agree. I think we put that as shall. That kind of does something to our game and fish we don't want.
Appreciate that, Representative. Any other comments? And I really do note that there are some of our fellow legislators down the hall that take a microscope to these mays versus shalls, and I do appreciate that. So with that, do we have a question? A question being called? So this is on page 2, line 3, that may becoming a shall. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, aye? No?
No.
Motion carries. So on page 2, line 3, it will remain may. we are back on the bill. Any more amendments? Question being called by
Mr.
Representative Storr.
Mr. Chairman, I think, given the comments from our good friend from the northwest part of the state, that perhaps it's on the amendment, but the language that's the insertion of page 2, line 19, about the annual fee established under this section shall be different. I think that is also getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, unless I'm misunderstanding the idea behind there. I feel like that is something that would happen through the promulgation of rules through the commission with the advice of the advisory board, and doesn't need to be in the bill at this time and may go run afoul of the interstate commerce.
Any other comments?
Right, so my amendment would be just to strike that language.
So on the amendment, page 1, line 32, sorry, line 34?
Yes, line 32
I would,
through,
do we have a second?
I'll second it, just.
Representative
for
Worf,
for
second.
discussion.
Okay, open for discussion.
I don't think removing that hurts the bill, because I think that's something that will come down the road. And that's already an accepted practice. It's a normal thing that non-residents pay a disproportional fee versus what residents pay. So I'm sure that the Game and Fish Commission, when it comes time to setting those fees, that would be addressed. So I don't have any problem removing that from the bill. I just want the committee to know that that is kind of an accepted practice. In hunting, fishing stuff, there is a differential pricing structure for residents and non-residents. So it's a standard. I would say this doesn't harm the bill, so I would urge an aye vote.
Appreciate that discussion. I'm going to let some folks think about it and make a quick comment. We go round and around with this, and not being a lawyer, not understanding the Interstate Commerce Act, I think that I really do understand where the bringer's coming with it. I think that as it does or does not leave this room today, this bill, it will certainly affect the vote moving forward. It's my personal opinion if we can't differentiate that. I put a lot of thought into this, and I do understand, we're not setting it now. I think, Representative Harshman, do you have any thoughts? We brought this amendment.
I think the may there is fine on line 33, the proposed amendment. I think that is fine. I'm going to support that. I think it improves it.
So you're talking about, that's what you're talking about.
but you're suggesting taking the shall to may on line
Mr. Chairman,
33.
I think I misunderstood. I thought it was just to strike the word shall on line 33 and insert may.
I thought it was to strike the whole thing, so.
So maybe we need some clarification.
From the bringer.
I would accept the amendment to the amendment to the amendment to just turn it into a may if it's important from the bringer of the amendment to have that in there in some form.
Okay,
That would work for me.
Thank you, and your
I think.
second has motion that
And I am
it's
fine with that
acceptable.
too, because it really does. It doesn't hurt whether we leave it in or take it out. That's an accepted standard, so I don't care. Let's change shall to may. I'll do that.
Okay. Question being called on that amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That amendment carries. You got that? Tanner? Great. Okay, we are back on the bill.
Gonna call a question.
Question being called on House Bill 5. This will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 5. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman.
Aye.
Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storer.
Aye.
Representative Thayer.
Aye.
Representative Worf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there are 9 ayes.
Thank you, committee. A lot of work on that bill in the last couple of years and decades. We are on to House Bill, and understanding we got about 30 minutes, House Bill 204, non-resident fishing license fee increase. And to explain the bill will be myself. I'm going to stay up here in the chair. This was a committee bill previously. It's been something that I have been contemplating, and we had some testimony on previously for how long this has continued, and certainly we'll walk you through the bill. The meat of the bill is on page 2. Lines 4, your non-resident fishing license for your annual, goes from $100 to $110, 10%. Your non-resident daily license goes from $12 to $14, and your non-resident 5-day consecutive fishing license goes from $54 to $60. That's a newer license that the department brought a couple years ago. It doesn't have a lot of folks that opt into it, but committee, the general concept here was to go 10% above. I've gotten some pushback from some of my accounting friends, but certainly talked to some of the folks that sell these licenses. People do pay cash, and if we went straight 10%, we'd get into dollars and cents. So pretty straightforward little bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions, provide any more data if you need it. Representative Campbell.
Just had a quick question for you. Do you happen to know, when maybe the last time these were adjusted and what that amount?
I do have that data for you.
Thank you.
Non-resident daily fishing licenses go back well before, and I may call in the department, well before 2015. The 5-day began in 2019, which I alluded to. And the annual bumped from 92 to 102. And for the committee, there's a $2 difference in some of this. Each licensed selling agent does get a small number, $2 to transact this. It's time and effort out of their day. So as we talk about this, there is a $2 amount baked into it. But yeah, so for your resident, what's called non-resident annual, in 2017, it was 92. It got bumped to 102 in 2018. And as far back as I can remember, it's been $14 for the non-resident daily. So looking to bump that $2 whole. Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious to hear the numbers of fishing licenses sold on an annual basis, both resident and non-resident at this point in time.
Thank you, Representative Storr. I'm going to ask the agency up. When I had this bill teed up last year, I had that on my cheat sheet, but I don't, it is on the fiscal. And potentially, Mr. Osterlin can comment on that. Welcome back, Mr. Osterlin.
Did I miss it?
Thank you, Chair Byron and committee members. And let me get myself together here. I am Alan Osterlin, Chief of Fisheries for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Good to see you all again today. So for non-resident daily fishing, in 2024, we sold 159,556 licenses. For the non-resident 5-day fishing license, 25,690, and then for the annual, 22,504 licenses.
Thank you, Mr. Osterlin. Committee, any other questions of the bringer of the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Storr.
Sorry, could you repeat the 5 consecutive day non-resident license?
Chairman Byron, absolutely. Representative Storr, for the 5-day in 2024, it was 25,690.
And for the annual?
And For the annual, it was 22,504.
And for members of the committee, if you're looking at the fiscal note, there are some assumptions in here. So they may have some adjustments in there. These fiscal notes are as accurate as they can be with information provided. Any other questions for the bringer of the bill? Okay, at this time, I would love to open up to other electeds, agency. If you want to stay up and comment, or if you're good, we can continue to other folks in the room that like to comment. That go ahead, Director
Mr.
Bruce.
Chairman, yeah, I'll be extremely brief because we're short on time, but I did pass around what we call an agency snapshot for your reading in all your spare time that you have these days. But I don't think I need to tell most of you, but our hunter and angler dollars pay for our department. We get no general funds. And that snapshot just kind of walks you through where we get our money. So instead of me going through that, I just want to thank the bringer of the bill, because oftentimes, such as the last bill you guys worked so hard on for so many years, it creates additional issues with the department, stretches our capacity. And so the thought process of bringing a companion bill such as this one alongside of it really helps the department be able to implement those other things. So if we look at the numbers of what this would bring in additional revenue for the 5-year average, not quite updated with those 2024 numbers, but through 2023, we get right at $700,000 a year, if that gives you some perspective of impact for the department. So with that, we'll keep it brief and just stand with any questions.
Thank you, Director Bruce. And Director Bruce, I do have a question. Do you recall when you last took funds from the general? Or maybe my co-chair would know.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, and Representative Harshman, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have recoupment funds that are available to us through state statute. We got these pre-COVID. What it is when we give out reduced license fees per state statute that you guys have enacted, that's a loss to the department. So in state statutes, you guys may reimburse us for those. Last year, I think we told right around we go about 1.2 million a year. So we no longer get those since it was right around our difficulties of COVID. So maybe 2020 or 2021 was the last time.
Thank you, Director Bruce. I just think it's really great that they have become their own entity, and we certainly still are doing a lot of work on behalf of them and looking at how to help them remain in the current capacity they're in. Any other questions for the department?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, given that the non-resident 5 consecutive day license began in 2019 and has reached, actually, is now more than the annual number. I'm just curious if you saw, has the annual number decreased as people have had the opportunity to use just the 5-day, slightly less expensive, or have these continued to grow with the interest in fishing over the last 5 years?
Chairman Byron, Representative Storr. So yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of really hard to get our fingers on, but we saw an uptick on our non-resident license sales. If you look at the 5-year average over COVID, which you'd expect, people were getting outside. And it has ticked down slightly since then. I can't give you any hard numbers, but I think a lot of folks now, it's another opportunity for them to buy a cheaper license when they're out recreating, vacationing, and they're out here for a week. That seems like the more affordable option. So yes, they're probably buying that five-day license more than the annual. And then if you figure in, I'm sorry, I'm getting down in a rabbit hole. I'm going towards the residents now, but I'll just be quiet.
Thank you, Mr. Osterlin.
Follow-up.
Or follow-up.
Thank you. Maybe just, could you tell us about the daily non-resident fishing license numbers over the last, 5 years, I guess, given that price has not changed? and whether that's continued to go up or leveled out.
Chairman Byron, Representative Storr. So the last time we had an increase was in 2008. And I've got some numbers here from 2018 to 2024 for the non-resident daily. Since 2018, those numbers have peaked in 2021 and have at 169,556. And they've been decreasing since then. We're down about 5,000 licenses in 2024. And it goes up and down.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative
just
Storr.
observation that's just kind of consistent with COVID, I think, and post-COVID, just in terms of, people going outside necessarily.
Appreciate that, Representative Storr. Committee, back on the bill, we have, would like to open up to any other folks in the room who would like to make public comment. We may have someone online still surviving, but let's hop to in the room. And if you do want to comment on this bill, please come down and fill the chairs.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jess Johnson with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. I'll just keep it really short and simple and say we're in very much support of this. I think I talked to you the last committee about bringing pay-fors or companion bills to make sure we're not overloading our game and fish on that. We do believe very strongly that they are separate from the general fund. So these are the ways that we get there and make sure that that continues their ability to manage our wildlife as well as they do.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Josh Benton, Wyoming Field Manager for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Just echoing the previous comments and our support for these fee increases. This is a reasonable increase. I spend probably over $1,000 on hunting and fishing license every year. Other states have similar prices for non-resident fees. This is reasonable and a good step forward. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Not seeing anyone else in the room. If anyone is left online, Tanner? If you would like to comment on House Bill 204, good job sticking with us. Go ahead and reintroduce yourself and make sure you're unmuted.
Hello, my name's Wes Richner. I spoke on the last bill. I am definitely in favor for this bill. I see it day in and day out. It definitely help, bring more money to the state where it needs to be, put into and our resources. But I'm definitely in support for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richner. I think it's great coming from an outfitter. It's commenting. It's a lot of his clients that are going to be paying that fee. So appreciate any questions from the committee. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Oh, we have one more. Sorry. Go ahead and reintroduce yourself and unmute yourself.
Yeah, once again, thanks, Thomas Shaner, Mr. Chairman, fully in support of this. If anything, I would also urge the committee to, $2 is fantastic, but if there's any appetite for a further increase, I would also suggest that would be looked at. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Shaner. Appreciate that comment. Any questions of the committee on that? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and officially close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? Representative Provenza has moved the bill.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Storr. Okay, let's go ahead and work this bill. House Bill 204, page 1. Any amendments? Going on to page 2.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to amend on page 2, line 7, where we've inserted $14 to change that to $18. That makes with the $2 fee a nice round sum of $20 for a non-resident daily fishing license. We heard some great testimony about how there's probably not a lot of price elasticity there for a non-resident fisherman. And it brings in another $600,000 or so, given the number of licenses we are selling. And we know what it costs to manage our fisheries, and it's a lot more than what we're charging.
Second by Representative Provenza. Okay, committee, do we have any discussion on that? I will jump in here, and I do have some info in front of me. Montana daily, $14. Colorado daily, $19.97. Idaho daily, $22.75. South Dakota daily, $16. That's the info I have. Representative Campbell.
Can I make a suggestion not with that one, or do we need to finish that one?
Let's stay on that amendment for now and just comment on the amendment, and if it does pass, we can. If not, we can bring another one. Question on the amendment. I'll have one last comment. We have met some resistance on this, and I do really appreciate the bringer really targeting that impact from that out-of-state angler. I guess I will probably, I don't know how I'll vote, but I just don't want to sink this bill on this number. I really think that incremental increases is important. So with that, the question being called by Representative Harshman on page 2, line 8, increasing that $14 to $18. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Those opposed, no? No. That amendment has not passed. Any other amendment? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So page 2, line 4, inserting annual. So it's non-resident annual fishing license. I assume it's annual, not 12-month. Is it 12-month? 12-month? Okay, so 12-month. The non-resident 12-month fishing license.
I'll second that, and I appreciate the bringer of that. The state used to go by the calendar year, and now goes by the day you buy your license, and it lasts till for 364 more days. So, any question on that? Line 4, page 2, line 4, inserting after non-resident 12-month fishing license. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? That amendment carries. Any other amendments to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I make an amendment on page 2, line 8 to $16.
Representative Provenza has seconded that from page 2, line 8 to $16 from 14. Seconded by Representative Provenza. Any discussion on that, committee? Question being called. All those in favor of page 2, line 8, going from 14 to 16, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? No. That amendment carries. Question on the bill. This will be a roll call vote for House Bill 204, non-resident fishing license fee increase. Roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 204. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman. Aye. Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storer.
Aye.
Representative Thayer.
Aye.
Representative Wharf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there are 9 ayes.
Okay, committee, thank you. It is 2:02. We are going to keep pushing forward here, committee. We have as much time as we like, within reason. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up Representative Alleman for House Bill 0211, hunting wildlife from vehicles, for an explanation on his bill. Representative Alleman, welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good committee. This is a simple little bill, but it does a lot. I have a constituent that asked me to run this bill, and what the problem was he is faced with a fine that hopefully he's not going to get, but he was caught shooting a prairie dog out the window of his truck off of a road on private property. And what the statute actually says is 23.306. It says, no person shall harass, pursue, hunt, shoot, or kill any Wyoming wildlife except predators from or use of airplane, automobile, and so on. And how I have changed this is no person shall harass, pursue, hunt, shoot, or kill any wildlife that requires a license or permit to take or is deemed threatened or endangered by Wyoming or federal wildlife regulations. So what this is changing, it was legal to shoot predators, coyotes, wolves, so on, out the window of your truck. But it was not legal to shoot a prairie dog out the window of your truck. It is not legal to set a mouse trap on the floorboard of your truck because the mouse is eating your wiring. That's illegal if you catch the mouse. Now let's look at what the fine is. This fine is a high misdemeanor, and it is punishable by, 23.6.202 under II. This fine is up to $10,000 and or 1 year in jail. I think that's a little stiff, so I would appreciate that we remove the word predator and put all wildlife in that does not require a license or is not protected by the state of Wyoming or the United States of America. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative Alleman, for joining House Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. Representative Harshman.
Representative Alaman, appreciate your explanation. Other examples, so prairie dogs, mice, mousetrap in a truck. I thought, oops, I got two traps in a truck I have in storage right now.
I wouldn't admit that.
I know, but I'm admitting it. I never knew. So
Yeah.
I want to hear some more. What other, I'm just
A
trying to.
housefly. If you slapped a
Well,
housefly
I mean-
that's buzzing you with the newspaper,
I mean, prairie dogs for sure, but certainly rabbits would be protected by the statute. You need
a jackrabbit is already a predator. So
Yeah.
you can already shoot a jackrabbit.
Co-Chair Harshman, Representative Alleman.
Go through the chair.
I do appreciate where
sorry.
this is going, but through the chair.
that old Midwest talk. Go back.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, rock chuck, woodchuck, rattlesnake, bull snake, anything that you do not have to have a license for or is not protected by the state of Wyoming, and it's not that much. You know, you can't shoot a bobcat because he's a fur bearer. A badger's a fur bearer. Prairie dog is the biggest concern.
Thank you, Representative Alleman. Representative Campbell.
Thank you for bringing this bill. Now that it made sense in my head before coming out of my mouth, question isn't for Representative Alleman, it's more for our department that manages, to get their perspective on how this change affects things and what that looks like.
Appreciate that. We will certainly get to that momentarily. On the committee, Representative Worf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a very big question because the presenter read the bill different than what it says, at least on my paper. He said that does not require a license, and does not is nowhere in here. What this says is that requires a license. So I want to make sure that, is it supposed to say does not require a license or permit to take? Because the way it's currently written, it says that it applies to anything that requires a license or permit to take or is deemed threatened or endangered. I think we might be missing a word.
Thank you, Representative Worf. Representative Alleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Worf, it says no person shall harass, pursue, hunt, shoot, or kill any wildlife that requires a license or permit to take or is deemed threatened or endangered by Wyoming. So it's saying what you cannot do. If it requires a license or is protected, you cannot shoot it out your window. You can't chase it with an airplane or a helicopter or so on.
Thank you, Representative Alleman. Representative Worf.
That's not how I read it, Mr. Chairman, but, okay.
Okay, committee, any other questions of the good bringer? Representative Connolly.
Yeah, I'm a little lost there with the wording, so somebody needs to explain it to my simple brain.
Thank you, Representative Connolly. Representative Provenza, you're tempted.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think the language is aligned with the intent of the bill. It's a little confusing because it's like a double negative, right? And it's got a long sentence, quite long for our statutes. Yeah. So I think we could consider trying to fix the language that changes like an exception portion. I don't know. That's up to the body to decide, but I think that's what the confusion's coming from, but it's that sort of double negative. So you can't harass something if you have to get a license for it. So that means you can't shoot out of your vehicle if you have to get a license to go hunt an elk. That's how it should be interpreted. I would have written the bill differently. No disrespect to you, I would have written it differently.
Thank you, Representative Provenza, and I think there's will to work on this. Representative Alleman, before I run to other electeds or state agencies? Do you have any more? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm good, but I don't see really the problem. No person shall harass, pursue, hunt, shoot, or kill any Wyoming wildlife that requires a license or is protected. I think that's pretty plain, and I think LSO thought it was pretty plain too.
Thank you, Representative Alleman. Appreciate that. Committee, we are at 2:10, and I think we will try to sneak in agency if we may, to comment on House Bill 211. Welcome back up to the front, and please, for the committee, for some of those that haven't met you, go ahead and reintroduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Angie Bruce, Director of Game and Fish. And I always like to bring the experts to the table with me, including those, we bring a whole team of folks in every week to help us prepare. And so I brought a couple of those folks with me today. Matt Withroder, he's our wildlife supervisor out of Laramie, and sitting next to him is John Lund, who's our wildlife supervisor out of Pinedale. So I've asked them to work the bill and talk through our impacts to you.
Thank you, Director Bruce.
Good morning. Again, as Director Bruce introduced myself, Matt Withroder, Laramie Wildlife Supervisor, Wyoming Game and Fish Department. There was one thought that we had when we're working this bill, as currently written. It specifically notes threatened and endangered through Wyoming. Wyoming has a statute that has protected animals, and then also protected birds. And so we would just have an amendment if they would like to see that protection statute. So it doesn't specifically say that they can't take those from a vehicle, but it would put them in violation of the protected statute, which is a different statute. And I have that amendment if the commission would like to, or excuse me, if the committee would like to hear that. Secondly, just as proposed, this bill wouldn't allow any person to shoot from any public roadway or highway. That's also protected by two different statutes. So just some thoughts there, is that's already protected under a different statute. So, and then the other thing that this may cause a little bit of confusion amongst our public, as knowing when a license or permit would be required to take different species of wildlife. life. So with that, I think those are our main points. Be happy to entertain any questions, or if you would like to hear that proposed amendment, we have that ready for you.
Thank you, committee. Any questions? I think if you have copies or if you would like to present that proposed amendment.
Yes, we do. Director Bruce will be bringing those forward.
And committee, just to tell you, it is 2:13, so let's get eyes on this. And then for those in the room and those online, we will have to continue this House Bill 211 and continue the discussion right where we end here momentarily on Tuesday. And I would encourage you to encourage leadership upstairs to give us our allotted 2 hours. And on that note, thank you, Vice Chair Harshman. Anybody in the room that traveled here today to comment on 211 that will not be able to be here on Tuesday? Please just raise your hand if they're in the room. Those on Zoom, please re-register for Tuesday. And with that, would you like to run through the amendment, or do you want us to? Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you run us through it? And then we'll be able to spend some time thinking about it. We'll get with the bringer of the bill, and then we'll continue this discussion on Tuesday. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Chairman. So the amendment we would be looking at would be specifically addressing page 2, line 1, after take, which is about 2/3 through that line. And therefore, we would add or recommend adding protected under Wyoming statute 23-1-101, parentheses A, parentheses IX, and parentheses I. And that list, and then the other amendment would be line 2, again, page 2, line 2, strike Wyoming and or, as again, that previous amendment, or that previous amendment would take care of Wyoming's protected species under Wyoming statute, as there is no threatened and endangered Wyoming-specific statute.
Okay, big thank you to the department for that. Committee, we can go ahead and sleep on that, digest it. We can talk to the bringer of the bill. And with that, we will just continue this House Bill 211, first thing Tuesday at noon. And please keep your eye on committee announcements. And when I go to the mic, we will have a new slate of bills coming up after we get through 211 on Tuesday. With that, I appreciate it. And committee, we are due upstairs now. We will have some floor managers for these bills, so I will speak to you individually for the 2 bills we finally snuck out of here today. Thank you, everyone.